Good morning, everyone. So, dear friends, I'm going to talk about teacher motivation. If I have to confess, I'm really confused about what teacher motivation is, and I think I'm going to share my confusion with you. Teacher motivation seems to be an important idea. In the first plenary, Alison Barrett just talked about the need of motivated teachers in our classrooms. So, what do we mean by teacher motivation? Can teachers be motivated, or are they motivated by themselves? So, when I was thinking about teacher motivation, I remembered a book I read some time ago by John Holt, How Children Fail. I forgot everything that I read in the book, but I remembered only one thing, that is, do children have any vested interest in failure? So if we apply the same thing to teachers, do teachers have any vested interest in failure, in not being motivated, in not interested in doing their work better? So, dear friends, I'm going to begin this presentation with two anecdotes about teachers. Let's say there are two teachers, teacher A and teacher B. They have all the needed required qualification. So, teacher A goes to school classes every day, teaches regularly, completes, or as it is called in our context, covers the syllabus, fulfills everything expected from her by the policy, by the institution, by everybody. And there is teacher B, who also does what teacher A is doing, but this teacher B talks to students every day, or finds opportunities to talk to her students every day. She talks to her colleagues about her teaching work. She talks to her family members about her work in the school. She spends money to attend conferences, to buy books, to subscribe to magazines. And by doing all this, she exhausts herself every day. What do you think? Which teacher seems to be motivated, teacher A or teacher B? B? But teacher A is doing everything that is expected from that teacher. And teacher B is doing something extra, which is not actually needed if one has to live through the profession, if one has to survive in the profession. But as you guessed, teacher B seems to be motivated, and this tells us that motivation is an abstract notion and it can be gauged or seen only through behavior. What sort of behavior teachers exhibit that shows whether a teacher is motivated or otherwise. Okay, to begin with, the institution where I work, the situation seems something like this. If you can't read the two lines at the bottom of this cartoon, I'll read it for you. So actually, the way I look at it, my job is to come to work, and your job is to motivate me. Is it so with all the teachers that you are acquainted with? Okay, there are two schools of thought regarding teacher motivation. One is motivation is always discussed, I find, in terms of gossip. Teachers always say that, okay, my students are not motivated, they are not interested, they don't like to do their homework, and things like that. And the wider society, it says that nowadays teachers are not teaching well, they are not motivated, so on and so forth. So this is school of thought number one. and number 2 is information. So there are people who are trying to understand what teacher motivation is and how teachers can be motivated. So dear friends, a brief outline of the presentation. I am going to talk about first how I come across this topic, why I wanted to focus on this area, and so on and so forth. Second, I'll explore the notion of teacher motivation as it exists in the literature, in the little available literature. And the third will be, I'll narrate a study that I have conducted. And finally, as there is going to be a coffee break after this presentation, and we all love coffee, so I'll conclude. So genesis of this study, or my interest in teacher motivation. I am associated with one English Teachers Club. It's a small group of teachers, self-help group of teachers who meet regularly and talk about teaching. So in the Teachers Club I'm associated with, there are 6 members. We began with 13 members, and today we are only 6. So I think what made other 7 teachers to leave this club? Were they not motivated? The second thing, the second interesting event in my life was an experiment that I carried out with my students. After 7 years of teaching in my college, I noticed that students rarely speak or they are interested in talking to their teachers. They just come to their classes mechanically. They do the work somehow and they go home. They neither show any interest nor any disinterest. They're just there. I tried to talk to them, but there wasn't any success. But I decided that I should know what students think about teaching, about their experience of learning. So after 2 months and 1 semester, I invited them for a tea party. Instead of going to class, we went to the canteen, and all students were in great tension. They were confused. They couldn't understand why the teacher was doing this weird act, instead of coming to the class and doing the routine job, so giving this tea party. So there was dead silence. We sat there for 25 to 30 minutes. We had our tea, and everybody left quietly. I didn't force them to talk. So after a week, I said, today also we are going to have this tea party instead of the class. So we went to the canteen, we had that party, and I could see some whispering, some small voices. They were talking among themselves. They were saying, has this teacher gone mad? Why is he doing so? Why he is spending so much money and treating us with a cup of tea? So one girl who is a bit articulate, so I noticed that she wanted to say something. So I said, do you want to say something? She said, yes. Actually, she was waiting for that invitation. She said, sir, why are you spending so much money on us? I said, I want to know how you feel about your life in classroom. What do you want to learn? What are your aspirations? What are the problems or challenges you face in learning? So these students slowly started voicing their thoughts, and what they said was a sort of eye-opening experience for me. They said that there is nothing interesting in the classroom, nothing interesting happens in the classroom because we know in advance what is going to happen in the classroom, because our senior students have already told us what this teacher is going to tell, when he is going to be upset, what sort of notes he is going to give, and so on and so forth. So there is nothing interesting. We know everything. We know what notes you are going to give. We have them already with us from our past, from our senior students. So in short, the lesson for me was they wanted that teachers shouldn't be predictable. They wanted that the teachers should do something new every day in the class, in the lesson. So if teacher has to do something new, teacher should keep learning. Teachers should know new things. So this also pushed me towards this area of motivation. And the third important event was the study of motivation. I did my master's in the College of St. Mark and St. John in Plymouth in UK. And there was we had a small component on motivation in one of our modules. And there I came across this statement by Sultan Durney, where he says that there is a positive relationship between teacher motivation and student motivation. If teacher is motivated, there is a possibility that he can influence the motivation of students to learn, and there could be better learning outcomes. Another push factor, to borrow the expression from Rod, was, I'm really sorry, the centrality of the teacher in overall educational process. I find that teacher is as central to education as students. Teacher is as important as students. The identity of teacher and student is interdependent. And teacher is the most, I find, and correct me if I'm wrong, teacher is the most neglected entity in the educational process. The existence of teacher is always taken for granted. Whatever dictates we receive from policy, from the authorities, so they come as if teachers are waiting for them, and they can easily implement it. So in this sense, they are neglected, and teachers are severely, harshly criticized for not doing their work the way people expect them to do. And finally, teacher is the ultimate decisive power in making or marring whatever innovation policy proposes. It is teacher. If policy says, okay, this is the thing that should happen in our classroom, but it is teacher who decides whether it should happen or whether it should become a reality or not. So teacher is central in overall educational process. So therefore, I find it is really worthwhile to explore this notion of teacher motivation. So another thing that interests me is this my struggle to understand the notion of teaching. What is teaching? Is it just an act like that teacher A I talked about at the beginning? Just going on doing it, doing the job, covering the syllabus so that nobody can have even a slight glimpse of it? Or is it doing better? Is it learning new things and doing it better every day? What is teaching? So I tried to understand this notion, and I have a tentative answer for me, and I found that teaching is doing it better. It's not just doing the same thing every day or year after year. And finally, when I decided that I will do some study on teacher motivation, I had a very ambitious aim, in fact over-ambitious. I wanted to reconfigure the notion of teacher motivation, because whatever little I read, I found that teacher motivation is often discussed in terms of motivation to join the profession, and somehow I thought that it should be redefined or reconfigured in terms of teachers' motivation to learn further, to keep on learning, to keep growing. So with all this at the backdrop, I decided to undertake the study. So what is teacher motivation? So if you can spend a minute and think, what is teacher motivation? Is it anything different from student motivation? Or does it differ in any way from motivation, let's say motivation to buy a car or to buy a house? What do you think? We had one presentation on day one, and there we saw Dr. Amol Padwar made a presentation on teachers' motivation for professional development, and there we saw that teacher motivation is discussed in terms of motivation to join the profession. So that is one thing. Second is, but as I think on it, I'm still it's a work in progress. I find that motivation for the profession is a bit different from motivation for teaching. Teacher motivation is often discussed in terms of motivation to join the profession. It is because the profession looks a bit safe, one can easily get into the profession, and one can live through it. They can spend 25, 30 years there and peacefully retire. So I find this aspect a bit different from motivation for teaching. So the moment we say motivation for teaching, so there are two things. One is what I do must meet the needs of my students, and it also satisfy me as a person, as a human being. And in this sense, I find that motivation for teaching is a bit long term, it's dynamic, it changes, and this motivation for joining the profession is short-lived, because once we get that appointment order and once we are confirmed in the service, that is the end of the story. One of my friend, he wrote an article in Marathi magazine. So he said that teacher's life is very interesting in our country. All teachers need to do is to get into the job, and after that there is only two important things remain in their lives. The first important thing is to get married, and the second important thing is to retire. That's it. Okay, the second question is how this teacher motivation operates, what it does to teachers and students. These are the two puzzling areas. And with my little knowledge, I haven't come across any definitive argument or any framework that responds to these two questions. What is teacher motivation and how it operates? Okay, the little evidence from the literature. Motivation to join the profession, and often there are two reasons cited for this. Teachers have intrinsic motivation, they want to do something good in the lives of their students. So they have this moral overtones for that. And besides, they love kids, or they love students. They love working with students. So these are the reasons cited often when teacher motivation is talked in terms of motivation to join the profession. Second is motivation to stay in the profession. Why people stay in the teaching for a long time in our country? Because I have Case of India presents altogether a different picture, because in our country, people once join the teaching, they stay there till the end. They won't leave it. They don't find it exhausting. They are not stressed. There is no burnout. They stay there. So probably, this needs to be explored, because this is a bit different from other contexts. And finally, motivation to grow, motivation to develop, motivation to learn remains a neglected issue. So there are two frameworks that I found interesting that explain teachers' motivation. One is by Zoltan Durney. So he says that there are 4 components of teachers' motivation. Number 1 is there are some intrinsic factors. People love working with children, people want to contribute something to the field, or they are doing something good for others, and things like that. And there are some contextual factors, like demands from the institution, demands from the students and colleagues, from the wider society, and demands from the policy, and things like that. And there are temporal factors. So teachers seem to be motivated after 3 or 4 years into the service. First 3-4 years go in their concern about survival in the classroom. After that, they feel a bit settled and they can start doing something new, or they can meditate on that. But by 55, they come into the retire mode and they say that, okay, now there are only 2 years, what remains to be done? And there are other factors. Teacher Durney says that it is very brittle. It can be easily broken. For example, if the teacher is upset over something or some incident at home, so he might not be that motivated for work. So second concept, this comes from Oskin. He says that there are 2 aspects of teacher motivation. One is interests and the second is idea. Teachers are human beings first, and then they are teachers. They have interests, they have material interests, they have spiritual interests, or they have ideal interests and things like that. They want to buy a house, they want to own a car, they want to travel around the world, they want to go on a holiday to Switzerland or something like that. And besides, they have ideas like, okay, this is how English should be taught. I will write a book on teaching skills or things like that. They have some ideas. And together these ideas and interests emerges teachers' motivation. That is what Oskin says. But again, I am distinguishing between teacher motivation in general and teacher motivation for professional development. So this remains largely an unexplored territory. And there are some puzzles or assumptions when people discuss about this TM for professional development. Is it the same learning as that of students? Do teachers learn the same way as students learn? Can we apply the frameworks available for student motivation to teacher motivation or teachers' motivation for learning? And finally, there is this puzzling notion of learning. What is teachers' learning? Is it just the accumulation of knowledge? For example, if teacher has post-graduation, then he or she completes PhD. So can we call it professional development? So there are some issues like this. And again, there are 2 frameworks which discuss teachers' motivation for professional development. One comes from Durney and Kubaniova. This is very recent. It comes from 2014 book, Motivating Learners and Motivating Teachers. So there, they are talking about ideal teacher self. Teachers have their own ideals. they want to become something like, okay, XYZ in the next 10 years. I would be doing something like this. Okay, I will have 10 books to my credit, 20 articles, 50 presentations or things like that. They have an ideal teacher self, and there is ought to teacher self. How should one behave in the institution, what colleagues expect, what institution expects, and things like that. And finally, this is not discussed by Derny and Kubaniova, but I have added it, existing teacher self. What do they think about themselves? Are they inclined towards their ideal teacher self or ought to teacher self? There is always a struggle. For example, in my institution, the things like making a presentation in the conference or doing academic study is discouraged. So my ought to teacher self should be like teacher A I talked about in the beginning. You just go to your class, do your work, go home and come back again next day. So that is ought to teacher self. And ideal teacher self is a bit different. I want to become something like XYZ in the next 5-10 years. So there is always a struggle, and I think the more one is inclined towards ideal teacher self, there are possibilities that there will be motivation for professional development. There will be motivation for further learning. So another framework, this comes from Hussman et al. Again, this is a recent research, and it comes from the only book that I have come across, Teacher Motivation, Theory and Practice. So there, Hussman and his colleagues, they are discussing this motivation for professional development in terms of future time perspective, FTP they call it. And they say that this FTP is actually a vision for the future, how teachers want to see themselves in future. And the stronger this vision, there will be more paths, or they themselves become more resourceful, and they create avenues, opportunities for them to learn and grow. And they discuss this notion of FTP in terms of time bubble. And they say that this time bubble is a mix of events from the past, present, and imagined future. And the more stronger the vision of the future, there are more chances that they will be investing their time and energy in professional learning. Okay, now the study. So I have done the study on teacher motivation, and if we say that teacher motivation is a broad area, so the specific area I have focused on is motivation for professional development, and again I have narrowed it down to factors affecting motivation for professional development, because I found that this whole area is quite confusing and puzzling. So I have to begin with something smaller, and that is what my supervisor also advised me. So rationale. There are absence of any studies on this area. This thing I found very interesting. Position of English in India. English is a privileged space in India. We believe that English has that transformational power. English can give you bright and better future. And we are the teachers of English. And in every school and college that I have visited in my area, English teachers have some privileges, or they are given some sense of importance. And another thing worth telling is that it's my experience again, teaching is always looked upon as a fallback career, because people try to become doctors or engineers, or that's what they dream of, and when they find that they are not fit for them, they join teaching. And in teaching, Teacher of English, he assumes a bit superior position as compared to teachers of other subjects. And people in my area, this acronym ELT, English Language Teaching, as we understand it, is not English Language Teaching. There it is English Literature. So they write that BA-ELT or MA-ELT. So, I mean, they just show it off. It's something that needs to be exhibited. So, interesting question for us is, what motivates these teachers to learn if they consider themselves so important? This change and innovation topic, English language teaching is the only, I mean, it's again my understanding, is the only area of education which has been, which is subjected to this change and innovation. There is an onslaught of change and innovation things in English language teaching. Every year we have so many training programs for teachers. There are so many new things that policy wants teachers to take up and things like that. So if all this thing has to become a reality, then teachers are to be learning things. Absence of ELT specific pre-service training in our country. We have general professional qualification courses like diploma in education or bachelor's in education, and there isn't any ELT specific component in that pre-service education. And if teachers have to cope with the demands and challenges of English language teaching, they have to keep learning once they are in the profession, and that is professional development for me. And neglect of teachers I have already talked about, and there are several expectations from the policy and public from the teachers. Policy wants that, okay, teachers should be doing this, they should teach in constructive way or things like that. Public wants that teachers should teach their kids so that they can get better jobs in the market. And there are so many contextual constraints for teachers in India. And it differs from place to place, from teacher to teacher. If I have to talk about my context, so support from the institution is one constraint, and lack of resources is another constraint, and disinterested students, I am not saying are unmotivated or not motivated students, they are disinterested students because they find that this whole exercise of learning in schools is futile. And finally, Rod Bolaitho talked about this, the teacher in the 21st century, the notion of new teacher. So today we are not only expected to teach just the language, but we are also expected to teach soft skills and report writing, journalistic skills and things like that. So there are additions to our jobs. So there are some assumptions. Professional development is crucial, and Chris Day, in his introduction to International Handbook on CPD, says that professional development is looked upon as a link between the proposed change and innovation and reality. If that change and innovation has to become real, the only link is teachers' professional development. So he gives that much importance to teachers. And second assumption is teachers are interested in professional development. I said at the very beginning, following John Holt, do teachers have any vested interest in failure? I find that, okay, there is no vested interest. They don't want to fail by choice. They don't want to remain unmotivated by choice. So teachers are interested in professional development is an assumption. Motivation for professional development initiates, sustains and cultivates professional learning is what I believe, and there are some factors, X factors, that affect or that influence whether teachers will be motivated or otherwise for professional development. Okay, the theories I have followed in my study are from Durney and Oscar, the frameworks that I have already talked about. This was the research question. What factors affect motivation of teachers of English for CPD once they have joined the teaching profession? So sample comes from this area. I am not sure if you can see. If you can see this highlighted area, a small circle. So sample comes from this region. I have data from 83 teachers, 43 women and 40 men. Most of them work in either rural or semi-urban areas, institutions in these parts. They have experience ranging from 5 years to 20 plus years. All of them work in centralized education system. By this I mean their schools and colleges are either affiliated to state education boards or central education boards or the state universities. And they have professional qualifications like diploma in education or bachelor's degree in education. And the instruments for the data I used were questionnaires and interviews. And the content for the questionnaire, the source, that came from Durney and Ushioda, 2011, and Blackburn and Lawrence. I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a minute. And the secondary source was prompted narratives. So these were collected over a period of 3 years. So questionnaire content. The challenge before me was I wanted to explore what factors motivate teachers for professional development, and the challenge was what to ask teachers. So it was decided that first of all I need to check what do teachers mean by professional development, what are their perceptions of professional development, whom they call professionally developed teacher, and then what challenges or constraints they face in their professional development journey. So one area of content was teacher characteristics. So there were questions about quality of subject knowledge that teachers possess, the knowledge of modern teaching techniques, classroom management skills, innovativeness, tolerance towards students' error, good preparation in advance for lessons, and encouraging student talk. So these were the topics that I came across in Durney, Ushioda, and Blackburn and Lawrence. So second area was professional development activities. Reading professional literature, attending events events like seminars, conferences and workshops, or their training programs, observing teaching, discuss with colleagues, join teacher association, be a part of network, pardon me, and experimentation and publications. The third area is teachers' preferences for professional development activities. So in professional development activities there is a list, and I asked teachers, out of these what do they prefer most? And the final area was problems and challenges they faced in professional in their professional development activities. So second set of content was if they have to learn and grow or develop, whatever you would like to call, so what sort of opportunities they can imagine. Because in India, once a teacher joins the profession, she has to remain a teacher because there isn't any clearly defined career structure. So there can be only new responsibilities or new roles in the life of teacher. So what sort of opportunities they can imagine of? And second area was, do teachers feel interested and able to take up those new roles and responsibilities? This was the third area, problems faced in availing the opportunities. For example, teachers said that, okay, I have the opportunity of setting the question paper for matriculation examination. So this opportunity is given to teachers, the board paper, question paper, and I think that I am interested and able to set that paper, but my school is not going to relieve me for 10 days. Okay, this is the problem. Views about current roles and responsibilities, the tasks, the duties that teachers perform in their schools. Do they feel happy, content, and things like that? Do they feel satisfied? Do they feel stressed, burnt out? Feelings about being an English teacher. Do they think themselves superior to other subject teachers in the institution? What are their views about the syllabus? Do they find the curriculum, the textbook they teach interesting or otherwise? Views about innovation. There is one concrete example of a teacher that I am familiar with. He says that every year government wants us to do something new and I am really bored of it now. So this is that teacher's view about innovation. And views about autonomy. Do teachers feel free that they can do anything they want in their classrooms, in their institutions? Okay. So these were the topics or the content of the questionnaire and the highlights of the data. I am not going to present the data in terms of tables or graphs. I have just compiled a list of highlights, and they show a certain pattern. So teachers find that a good teacher is proud of being a teacher. They enjoy a sense of pride being a teacher, and they are capable of using technology, and they are innovative and motivating. They do something new and they motivate their students. And these are the attributes of a good teacher from the respondent's perspective. And responding about professional development activities, they said that reading professional literature is most important for professional development. Second on the list was attending conferences and seminars, and the third was participation in training programs. And by training programs, they meant those mandatory in-service trainings. And asked about the opportunities, they said that, okay, there are no opportunities. For example, being working as a trainer or setting question papers or taking up the supervisor's role in the institution or being the head of some or the other committee. So these are very few opportunities, and they are available to a few limited teachers. They are not for everyone. And regarding interested and able, so they presented again a situation which can be described in terms of dilemma. They said that, okay, 50% teacher out of 83, 49 teachers said that we are neither interested nor able. And regarding support from the institution, basically from the institution, so they said that, okay, there isn't any support. Yesterday there was a reference to that national curriculum framework for teacher education in India, and it was said that nowadays that NCT is also talking about professional development. But if we read the document, in that document it says that teachers can avail professional development opportunities in a year for 3 to 4 days. It is clearly mentioned. Teachers can take leave of absence from the school for 3 to 4 days, and it says that this leave may be granted to teachers if they come and ask for it. So it is at the discretion of the institution. If principal says no, you go next month. So that is the end of motivation. So this lack of support, and this support is, we will discuss it in a bit more detail a bit later. And time. Teachers say that there isn't enough time because already the routine job consumes most of the energy. And this final thing, teachers find that they are not really proficient in their own language. They find that they need to learn English. They need to improve their English, and their lack of proficiency in English is one of the obstacles in their own professional development. They said that there is too much work in the school, basically admin work, but they enjoy a sense of importance and they have more opportunities. They can go out of the school frequently because they are English language teachers and there are more in-service trainings for them. And regarding autonomy, they say that there is no autonomy. Teachers can't do anything on their own. And the syllabus, they find that it is neither interesting nor boring. It is just given, it is there, and they have to cope with it or enjoy it, whatever. What happened to the slide? Okay, great. So this is the data, and I have classified them in terms of 5 areas to provide a sort of framework for factors that influence teachers' motivation for professional development. The first area is teachers' own perceptions about the teacher, the good teacher, and themselves. A good teacher is one who has that sense of pride, who can use modern technology, and who is innovative and motivating. That is what they find that a good teacher should have. And they want to become like them. They want to become good teachers, but they are aware of the constraints because they can't do all that. Because there are time constraints, there isn't any support from the institution, there are no resources, there are no cooperative colleagues, and there are, let us say, there are no networks or there are no avenues for them that they can undertake such tasks and develop themselves. So they are torn between these two things. One is they have their ideal teacher self and their existing teacher self. Second is they have their own perceptions of professional development. As we have seen, for them, attending seminars or conferences, attending training programs, or reading professional literature are the only sources of professional development and nothing else. They have a very narrow view. There were other items on the questionnaire, for example, observing each other's classes, talking to colleagues, being a part of network, or undertaking action research projects and things like that. So teachers don't find them very useful for their professional development. And they have their own perceptions about teaching as a career, and they have very few aspirations like working as a trainer. They don't meditate that they would write educational material, teaching material, or something like that. They have perceptions about professional autonomy. They said that there is no support, and if they do something new, so that effort goes unrecognized, there is no recognition, and there are no incentives if they do something new or if they learn something new for themselves, for their students. And perceptions about problems and challenges. So institutions are cited as the first big problem because institution can't understand the notion of professional development as they understand. So vision of professional development differs. Institution believes that teachers should give good results, then those teachers are good and professionally developed, but teachers find something else. The class size is cited as another reason, and the lack of resources. So findings. So these are the findings. Personal factors, the personal notion of good teacher. The self-image of the teacher is not very strong, they don't feel confident. And the sense of satisfaction and fulfillment of job is also not as expected because for example, they find that their English is not so good and they can't do anything, they are just the teachers. And their personal notion of professional development is very narrow and they want to undertake those tasks like reading professional literature, but they don't want to undertake any reflection or action research. And there are some ecological factors. Career growth opportunities are very, very limited, and nature of role diversity in the institution or job. Teachers have to do several things at a time, and professional autonomy and freedom to experiment teachers enjoy, so they are quite limited. They don't have any autonomy. They are actually busy with teaching and non-teaching work. Teachers have to undertake several tasks, like they have to cooperate with census duties or election duties and several surveys and things like that. And support and recognition available to teachers is not there. So conclusion, teacher motivation for professional development operates basically because of personal and ecological factors, and it appears from the study that I have conducted that it is not very conducive for teachers' learning for their professional development. So there are emergent issues, or we can even talk about it in terms of implications. There need to be a clearly defined career structure for the teachers so that they can keep on learning. So teachers need to expand their own understanding of professional development. Institutional authorities need to be oriented about the importance of professional development. And finally, teachers need to be just taken for granted. They need to be understood as human beings with ideas and interests. So the future directions, this study was conducted with heterogeneous data, but it needs to be explored with similar groups of teachers in terms of gender, in terms of location or experience. And there is an urgent need to explore the nexus, the relationship between students' learning outcome and professional development of teachers. It is always said that professionally developed teachers do motivate, influence better student learning, but this needs to be empirically established. And finally, a 360-degree view of teachers' professional development need. Teachers' professional development need to be undertaken. How policy feels, how their family members think, and what's, to borrow the expression from Rod, all major stakeholders feel about teachers' professional development. So these are the references, and that's it from me. Thanks a lot for your patience. So I think we have got 5 minutes. Yes? Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the nice presentation. I have two questions. One is about what is the years of experience of these teachers? Is there any range you have taken?
5 years to 20 plus years.
Okay. Did you find any difference in the motivational level or degree of?
Not very much. Not any noticeable difference or any remarkable difference. Okay. For example, a teacher with 20 plus years experience says that, okay, reading professional literature is the avenue of professional development, and teacher with 5 years experience also said the same thing.
Okay. Second thing, did you find any signs of influence of the pre-service training in the motivation of the in-service teachers?
Yeah, they had some idea about methods and materials and things like that about ELT. That's what the impressions they carried from their pre-service training. But beyond that, I'm not really sure.
One more question, sorry.
Yes, please.
This one. The other incentives, all of them are government teachers. They are in a way well paid. So it doesn't have any motivational effect. Is that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
The salary and other perks.
Yeah.
Does it play any role in the motivation?
Yeah, they like the job. They like the job because of the salary and the security and things like that. And they also seemed interested in learning further, but there are some constraints.
one another thing about the methods, you said prompted narratives. Prompted narratives.
Yeah, prompted narratives, yes.
How good it was for your analysis, useful? How was it useful?
Is actually the prompts given were something like this. What was the successful class? What were its features? How did you feel yourself when you were doing that lesson and things like that? And in those lessons, in those narratives, what I found was there were some patterns. For example, students are obedient, they have done their homework and they are following the instructions, orders of the teachers. So teachers found those classes very interesting. Yes.
Sir, I am in a dual position as a management part and a teacher, educator also. Two questions I am having now. Already I mentioned that disinterested students. Disinterested students, how the disinterest come to class in the guise of student. And one more question that you already mentioned, that retiring that period, only 1 year remained, half year, 6 months remained, the teachers used to say. So what is the motivation? What do we have to do as a management to the teachers? Any suggestions, any instructions, any guidance? If you are having, please narrate.
Okay, I'll respond to your second question first. I'm really sorry, I haven't got any guidelines or any suggestions how teachers should behave. I'm really sorry. I mean, we can talk about it in detail after this session. I've got only 2 minutes. Okay. And the first question, you talked about disinterested students. Probably I might have used the wrong expression. By disinterested, I mean students they want to learn, but they don't find anything worth learning in the classroom. That's what I meant.
How does this interest has come to class? Who is the responsible? Whether the student, the teacher, the management, or surroundings, how disinterest come to this class?
Probably everyone. Probably everyone, because they can't stay
To
outside.
what extent? What extent? As I'm so close to students, I won't use this disinterested students as dull students. We are not using now. The disinterested students, that word, it pinches me as my opinion is concerned.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I fully agree with your sentiment. I fully agree. Yes.
Mr. Dixit, I am very near to you. You are from Varda, I am from Adilabad.
Okay.
I want to know whether the study was conducted purely on government schools, or I know that most of the schools in your Maharashtra area are aided.
Some of the teachers were purely from the government school, but majority of them were from aided schools.
Yeah, most of the people from our area come to your area and get selected as teachers through the managements.
Yeah.
You see, they are not selected through any examination. How can we expect a professional attitude in that people?
They are selected?
Through the managements.
Yeah, I mean that is a different story. That is
most of the schools in Maharashtra are like that only.
Yeah.
Most of the people from my area migrate there and get jobs there.
Yeah.
As lecturers, assistant professors.
You must also be knowing how much they pay for that.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Sir,
Yes.
last question, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
How did you measure the extent of motivation of the teachers? How did you measure or the extent of motivation of the teachers that you interviewed?
By their behavior, by their participation in professional development activities and what they said.
Thank you.
The frequency of doing the activities. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Krishna, for a very interesting analysis of motivation that I think has many parallels in many of the contexts we all work in. Thank you, sir.